Hey, Ben here with Studio on the Lake once again. Hey, this is an interesting little deal. Some people were asking for it. So here's a flashback to last year, what I called the Good Santa. And I left a little bit of the intro for Studio on the Lake at the time. In there, there's my old fire, and this is the old studio. And everybody who's been subscribed for a while knows what happened to that studio. And hopefully this time next year, we will be filming and from the new studio, which is set to be rebuilt in the spring as soon as the snow goes away. So here's a Cottonwood Santa, and this full thing ran last year about this time, and people were asking for it, so I thought I would speed it up and run it through fairly quickly. So this is Cottonwood. This Cottonwood came from Jordy Johnson up there in Canada. He sent me a box of it a year or two ago. And I thought, well, it'd be kind of fun to do a little Santa. Of interesting note, it's about the same size as the gnome Santa, but there's that Cottonwood, and this was not a particularly good piece. But it had a wide enough section in the middle there. So it all starts out just the same as I always do. There's the pom-pom. It's going to be on his hat. That's the top of his hat right there. There's a nose and eyes, and you can see that I got a little bit long, but then I took it over to the bandsaw and cut it out. So the next thing is, don't watch this if you're squeamish. Take a right angle grinder and clean off you can see how it's getting down to the wood. And that's the back. I'm just flattening that out because this guy was not an ornament. He was kind of designed to hang on the wall. Now, a lot of this stuff needs to go away and get down to depth, and the quickest way to do that is with the right angle grinder. So that's the top of his hat that I just cut down. I'm leaving the pom-pom on the left, and that's where his eyes will go. So we're leaving a little space for the nose. And I'll cut deeper and deeper in for the eyes there. Poof, very fast. Quick lesson on, I noticed that someone had put something on there the other day on one of the carving channels on how to clean your burrs. This is the way I've cleaned them for years. A little torch, and I just burn that's a Kutzall burr in there. Those hand pieces are my old hand pieces. There's two of them. That's the new Ultima from PJL Enterprises over there. I say new, it was probably 2 years old and we lost it. And then you'll see the black one, which is my 20-year-old handpiece. So you got a Kutzall burr in there, cutting up around the hat, unlike the gnomes that we've been doing here lately this year. I'm carving down to get the nose, and I'm leaving a space because there's going to be actual eyes in there. So I would call this probably an intermediate carving. Wouldn't necessarily call it a beginner. This cottonwood bark is relatively soft to carve, and it carves fairly quickly. But it's real easy to slip and take away way too much. So you kind of have to have a steady touch with this stuff. I've got a couple more videos. I noticed one I didn't bring down with me, but one is carving oak leaves. You know, on one of the projects we're doing some oak leaves. One of the commission projects I keep talking about, they're doing oak leaves, so I did an oak leaf sample. So when I do a commission piece, and I wish I had those samples, but I will do whatever the proposal is. Let's say it's drawer fonts to cabinets, and then here's what we'd like on these cabinets. Say we'd like oak leaves on these cabinets, running down through the side pieces, the rails, style and rails. So I would draw up different concepts of oak leaves and lay them out in a rough pattern, and then I would go ahead and carve a small sample of that. So I might carve one that's 12 inches long, 3 inches wide, the same as one of the styles. Or I might carve, if it's a panel that I'm carving for a cabinet, say the panel is 2.5 by 4, I might carve a 1 by 1 foot section out of that panel and rough carve with no finish on it other than a wax. And I do have the video of the oak leaves with the wax on there, and I'll show you that here in a day or two when I get that edited. But that just gives you an idea of what's coming up in the future here. So we got this guy down to his nose. He has a mustache. And you can see there's not a whole lot of difference between this and a spirit face, this and the gnome. The concept's kind of the same. This guy's got the mouth and all the rest of that stuff in there. And I don't remember what happened to this guy. I didn't see him around. It's possible that he got put in that he got sold, and I just wasn't paying attention. You see how dull that shot was? The old studio was particularly cold, and I'd leave the camera out there, and I'd have to switch. I'd have to have two lenses and switch them back and forth because as the fireplace or the stove, pot-bellied stove there, started to heat the place up, what would happen is it'd start to condense on the inside of the lens. And I'd look up, and it had been getting progressively yellower as it's trying to filter through the light. I use a Canon 70D camera to do the filming, and it has a really good resolution. It cuts through everything, does a nice job. But when it starts to get garbage on the front of the lens or in the lens, inside of it, the condensation, it starts to filter the light, and it turns a yellow. You can see this one's starting to yellow, so I must have changed lenses, and it's just starting to get. And then you can see when I change the lens, you can see the next sequence is kind of fun because it becomes completely clear, crystal clear. And I ran this really fast. You could, I suppose, get the original is still up on the web. You'd have to go back 100 videos probably to catch that. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, feel free to do that. There's a link down in there if you want to buy me a coffee, contribute. That's great fun, and I thank everybody over the time that has done that. It just helps a little bit with the channel and gives me a purpose in life to go on. I don't necessarily need that. I do this out of fun, and I would continue to do it no matter what. And the channel is monetized, and it does bring in a little bit of money on the ads. But if you haven't subscribed, it's free to subscribe. And share with your friends if you think people might be interested in this. By all means, check out Jordy Johnson, Just Carve Rob, Mark the Maker, all those guys. We haven't heard anything from Calvin Carves. If you're a follower, I probably should go in there and look today. It was a young kid that we were supporting that was carving. The purpose of this channel is to keep you guys interested. I recognize and thank all of you who routinely comment. It's great to see your comments, and it's good fun. It's just something that it's enjoyable. So he's starting to look pretty good. There we go. See what I talked about there where everything suddenly became clear? I must have changed the lens on that and decided that ruby bit that's in there on the old handpiece, that's my favorite handpiece of all time. It fit perfectly in my hand. And you can see my old chair, which I may renovate and recover with a dust collecting system in it next year. We'll see how that works out. So that's a ruby bit, and we're down to the point where we're sanding at this point. So we're starting to finish, and everything I leave in here is going to be a finish. Sanding is a little bit of a misnomer, simply because I am still doing some carving and shaping. But most of the parts of this are able to be left just alone, right as they are. Similar to if you're a knife carver, you make that final cut, you get the final plane that you like the looks of, and it's done. If anything, you could use a little burnishing as opposed to sanding. So we had a little stop in there, and I don't remember what the heck I was talking about. But while I was out today, down here in Mason City, Iowa, the Christmas folks are out. They decided that they were going to come, and their standard Christmas fare, everybody in a hurry, everybody going where. There are more people than I've ever seen down here. I think all the farmers have all their stuff in, and it was time to. The crops are all appear to be in, flying around, and they're setting up for Christmas this year. So there are people everywhere devoid of common courtesy, and everybody out for themselves. And I saw a gentleman who reminded me of someone. Many years ago, there was a time just before the Kosovo air war campaign down in Kosovo. We had a small detachment down there. We had 2 Black Hawks that were painted white, and we had 6 outposts that were up on the Serbian border, and we'd routinely fly out there. There'd be an infantry platoon in connexes and HESCO baskets, if you know what those are, manning an outpost up on the wall, and they were looking down into Serbia to keep that out of there. So we would routinely fly these general officers around, and it was a couple days before Christmas, probably a week before Christmas, and I had arranged with an infantry platoon that was out at one of the outposts to pick us up a Christmas tree. Now, all the relatives and family would treat you really well at Christmas time, and they'd send you cookies and ornaments and popcorn strings and all kinds of neat stuff to decorate your Christmas tree. And I had volunteered, being one of several of the warrant officers that were there and the pilots. I was a senior instructor pilot there. So they were going to get me a Christmas tree. So we ended up taking the USARA commander around, a 4-star general who wanted to visit the troops. He was on his routine. So we went to all 6 of the outposts in one day, snow covered all over the place. And they brought the chaplain with them and that sort of thing. And we were getting ready to, we finished up the last one, or we're flying into the last outpost, and he said, "Hey, Chief, this is the last one. If you guys got anything that you need to do, go ahead and set that up, but we're just going to visit these last folks, and then you can take us back to Camp Able Sentry, which was by Macedonia." And I said, "Sir, actually, I do have one thing." And we had the USARA Sergeant Major with us at the same time, and they were sitting in the back. So I called ahead to the infantry platoon leader and said, "Hey, can I get that Christmas tree that you guys were going to get for me?" And he was like, "Sure, Chief, we'll have it ready for you." So as we're on short final landing on this outpost, there's a Humvee coming over the hill. On the top of it, it has strapped a Christmas tree that they've cut down, and there's a whole infantry platoon walking beside the Humvee as it come over the hill into the HESCO baskets and the connexes where they had their camp. And the general and the sergeant major started laughing, and they got out and they visited with the folks around there. And then we took that Christmas tree and we folded up the back seats with everybody helping, these 2 guys helping and their aides, and we pulled it through the doors of the Black Hawk, and it was sticking out about 2 feet on each side, and we flew this Christmas tree back to Camp Able Sentry and pulled it out. And then they hung around that day. Their flight wasn't going out of Skopje, Macedonia until the next day. So we had a big Christmas party with the infantry battalion and the USARA command group, and we decorated that tree that night. So it just proves that a lot of times you're away from your family if you're deployed in the military, and you guys know that have been out there. But I'm not real sure that we didn't get treated a lot better being away from home by friends and relatives sending stuff to us to try to make us feel better for missing being at home. So there's a little quick story for you. Here's got a little spear ball on there. It's a diamond ball, and I'm just kind of cleaning up around this guy and trying to get some of the contours back in there right where I want the little cracks and crevices. If you watch the video, I think it was posted earlier today, where I did a hat, a gnome Santa hat. I'm doing the same thing here. I'm poking little round balls in there to get that cotton ball effect that would go on up around the hat. So as you can see, I'm not giving you, this was done a year ago, and it's a retro flashback. I'll do a couple of these on occasion. I think that's kind of a neat idea. But you can see that I don't have any new tricks necessarily. I'm using the same old techniques because this guy was done a year ago. We left his cheeks big and chubby. I did have a reference, if I remember correctly. I think it was a combination of 2 or 3 Santas. And this guy does get painted. I do, and he will be painted with my standard paint, which have been Sonia paint. This guy, I probably put some gesso on him, or gesso, depending on how you want to say it, simply because this stuff really absorbs things. Those of you that are subscribed, you know that I like to burn final details in. This is the same burner setup that I still run today. They make those. I am not using the same this year micro hand pieces because the company, that PJL Enterprises, is one guy over in Minnesota who does those, but he still makes these burners. And a couple of you, and you know who you are, have went ahead and bought these. It's called an Ultima burner, and the pins are separate. You can see it's got a RC stereo jack on the right hand side there, and this is a heavy duty one. But I'm just cutting in some creases and lines that I couldn't get, and when it's painted, those lines will show up. So if you've made it this far, you kind of got an idea of what the channel's about. I said I was going to do a lot of birds this year. Mike, I still owe you that raven. I keep getting sidetracked by things in there, and it's amazing how fast a year will go by. I will get back to the raven and some of the other stuff. I did get some resin material. I'm doing some, I wanted to play around with some resin pine cones and putting some small carvings in a resin ball. And that may be a mistake, but we'll see. I was hoping that was at home last week when I was there. But as you know, Thanksgiving's coming up this week. All the kids and grandkids will be up to the house. And we do have snow, as you saw. The lake is not frozen like in the flashback intro here yet, but it won't be long. It'll be probably within 30 days. The lake will be frozen over. So there's what cottonwood bark looks like. When I was out today, one of the things I did was I went and got a couple more things for Jordy Johnson's paint kit that I'm putting together. I'm going to film that here the next day or two down here. What I'm doing is I'm building, my mother-in-law had a tin of watercolor. She used to take watercolor lessons, and she had a little 3x5 tin that had probably $500 worth of paint in it. When you start getting down to $10, $15 a tube. So, and that paint is still good. So what I'm going to do is I bought 2 pallets. I brought identical brushes, and I bought identical watercolor paper and a kit. And I'm going to put Jordy Johnson a kit together, and then I'm going to send that to him, and then I'm going to do a paint by number thing. And we're going to call it Teaching Jordy to Paint, if Jordy will cooperate and get along. That'll be kind of fun. So there's an addition you haven't seen me doing here lately. I went ahead and signed the back of that in addition to the other, and then he goes and gets painted. So that's what a quick Santa looks like in cottonwood bark, and then he gets a little bit of paint, and I don't normally show you the paint. But there's how he came out, rosy cheeks, the whole 9 yards. And he could have just as easily been an ornament if you'd put a screw or an eyelet in the top of his head. So, hey, thanks for everyone for tolerating if you went all the way through this. If this is the first time you've seen it, I'm glad to have you aboard. If you just decided to watch this again out of loyalty, hey, thanks again. This has been Bandwood Studio on the Lake.